Imagine taking an old computer that has become almost unusable, a machine that struggles with modern operating systems, opens applications slowly, and seems destined for a drawer or recycling bin. Now imagine turning that same computer into a surprisingly responsive desktop with a lightweight Linux distribution designed specifically to make limited hardware useful again. That is where Puppy Linux enters the story. Puppy Linux is one of the smallest and most resource-friendly Linux families available, and its philosophy is simple. A computer does not have to be new to be useful. Puppy Linux is not a single conventional distribution in the way many people understand Ubuntu or Fedora. It is a collection of lightweight Linux operating systems built around the Puppy concept. Different Puppy editions can be based on other Linux distributions, while sharing the goal of being extremely small, fast, portable, and easy to run. Because Puppy Linux is designed with efficiency in mind, it can work remarkably well on older computers with limited RAM, slower processors, or aging storage devices. One of the first things that makes Puppy Linux different is its tiny size. Many Puppy releases are measured in a few hundred megabytes rather than several gigabytes. That means you can download an image relatively quickly, place it on a USB drive, and boot the system without installing a large operating system onto the computer. This makes Puppy interesting for people who want to experiment, repair computers, or give an old machine another purpose. When Puppy Linux starts, one of its most impressive characteristics becomes obvious: speed. Puppy can load much of its working environment into RAM, depending on the setup and available memory. Once the system is running from memory, applications can feel remarkably responsive, even on hardware that would struggle with heavier desktop environments. This approach also reduces dependence on slow hard drives, which can be especially valuable when reviving computers with old mechanical disks. The lightweight design does not mean Puppy Linux is simply a bare command line system. It normally provides a graphical desktop, menus, file management tools, configuration utilities, networking options, and applications for everyday tasks. Different Puppy editions use different desktop environments and window managers, but the general experience is focused on simplicity and speed rather than visual effects or unnecessary background services. Another major advantage is portability. Puppy Linux is comfortable living on a USB flash drive, which means you can carry your operating system, applications, and personal settings with you. You can boot the same USB on compatible computers and have a familiar environment available wherever you go. This can be useful for technicians, students, travelers, and anyone who wants a portable Linux toolkit. Puppy also has an interesting approach to saving changes. Depending on how you boot and configure it, the system can use a save file or save folder to preserve installed applications, settings, documents, and other modifications. This creates a flexible middle ground between a completely temporary live session and a traditional full installation. You can test Puppy first and decide later how permanently you want to use it. Puppy Linux is also useful beyond simply browsing the web on an old computer. It can become a lightweight writing machine, a basic media station, a local file server, a diagnostic environment, or a rescue system. Because it can boot independently from an existing operating system, it can help users access files when another installation refuses to start. For computer technicians, carrying a Puppy USB can therefore be like carrying a compact toolbox. There are, however, some important limitations. Old hardware can have compatibility problems with modern wireless adapters, graphics chips, printers, or other devices. A lightweight operating system cannot magically create hardware support that does not exist. Users also need to consider browser compatibility and security, especially when using old computers for internet-connected activities. Choosing a currently maintained Puppy release and keeping applications updated where possible is essential. Another consideration is expectations. Puppy Linux is excellent at reducing overhead, but it is not necessarily the best choice for every user. Someone who wants a polished, standardized desktop with huge documentation resources and effortless compatibility with every mainstream application might prefer a larger distribution. Puppy is most attractive when speed, portability, low resource usage, and the ability to reuse older hardware are more important than having every feature enabled by default. That testing approach is one of Puppy Linux's greatest strengths. You can discover whether the keyboard, display, network adapter, sound, and storage work correctly before committing to an installation. If everything functions properly, you can create a persistent setup and begin customizing the system. If it does not meet your needs, you can shut down and try another distribution without permanently modifying the machine. So, who should consider Puppy Linux? If you have an old laptop sitting unused, a desktop that has become too slow for modern operating systems, or a USB drive that you want to transform into a portable Linux environment, Puppy is worth exploring. It demonstrates an important idea in computing. Older hardware does not automatically become worthless just because software has become heavier. Puppy Linux is ultimately less about chasing modern specifications and more about efficiency. It asks a different question from mainstream operating systems. Instead of asking how much hardware we can add to run demanding software, Puppy asks how much useful computing we can achieve with the hardware we already have. That philosophy makes it fascinating, practical, and relevant. Whether you want to rescue an old PC, build a portable troubleshooting system, learn Linux, or simply experience an operating system that feels fast and unconventional, Puppy Linux offers a solution. It may not replace every desktop distribution, but for suitable hardware, it can turn forgotten hardware into a useful computer again. And that is the magic of Puppy Linux. Sometimes, the best way to give an old computer a new life is not to replace it, but to give it an operating system lightweight enough to let it breathe again.